I was really intrigued by the trailer for Echo. Is this show as dark as Daredevil? Let's talk about it.
Maya. I see everything that you are.
What's up, Flick fans? Welcome back to the channel. Echo, episodes 1 through 3. That's what Disney sent me. I've seen it. We'll talk about 4 and 5 in another video. But basically, is this series what they promised us it would be? Let's do it. Here's the premise. Maya Lopez must face her past, reconnect with her Native American roots, and embrace the meaning of family and community if she ever hopes to move forward based off of the character that we saw in Hawkeye. This series is rated, wait for it, TV mature. It's the first time we've seen this in the current iteration of the MCU. Obviously, we had the Daredevil shows and everything we got on Netflix, and that is technically canon, I think. Maybe. And let's go episode by episode. That's how we're going to break this down. In number 1, we are kind of catching us up on the character of Maya before Hawkeye, during Hawkeye, and now where she is several years later, and that's where this series specifically starts. I don't want to say episode 1 doesn't really fit in with what we get in the rest of the show, but it doesn't really fit in. Because by the end is when the actual plot starts, and that's when we really hone in on her heritage, her hometown. That's where we spend most of our time. But in episode 1, we're seeing those moments and those clips, a lot of them having to do with her relationship when it comes to Kingpin. And there's also a really cool fight sequence in there that I absolutely loved. We've seen bits and pieces. We've seen moments. It delivers. It's not quite as authentic as some of the choreography we saw in the Netflix shows, but it delivers on everything you're looking for, that TV mature rating, and the cameos and Easter eggs in episode 1, and those moments specifically with Kingpin, and when he's, kind of staring Maya down and saying, "Here's why you're gonna work for me." God, who was I impersonating? It's pretty cool, and I really enjoyed certain sequences in the premiere. My issue was it just felt a little scattered. It was all over the place. We really started to focus up by the time we got to the end, and that's when I'm sitting back going, okay, I'm intrigued. Maya has this motivation now that we see play out in the first episode that she can take with her back to where she grew up, and there is an end goal that she has that isn't fully explored even after seeing 3 episodes, but I was at least curious about it in the first, as well as her relationships with those that she knew and were getting caught up on as an audience. So lots of intriguing things in the opening episode, and I had my issues, but it was pretty cool. Then we dive into episode 2, and it feels like a drastic tonal shift because we go from really dark, and I'm talking visually and morally, and things are happening, and there's this brutality to what she is doing. We see the first time that she murders, and all of these moments that are integral to who she is now, and she's not really the most likable character in the world. I know they're trying to build her up as that, but also, make a connection with the audience. I don't know if they're doing the best job at this point, but we shift into something that feels so much more familiar in episode 2, and we go from this dark tone to something that's a little more light, comedic, some side characters that are doing the MCU type of jokes. That's fine and dandy if you give us compelling characters, but I wasn't really feeling the connection to hardly any character because I just wasn't really invested in what episode 2 was all about. Now, while that's happening, there's also this focus on her heritage, and we spend a lot of time in that part of the story, whether it be a flashback or building up something that is to come that is somewhat comic book accurate, so that's pretty cool. They're obviously going for this grand moment that's going to come in either episodes 4 or 5, and that's great, but that to me was far more interesting than what we were getting here. But it's the back and forth between present and past that feels a little jumbled, and then every time we cut back to the present and what's going on in this small town, and kind of this group is running rampant, and there's a backstory there that I didn't care that much about, but we have to fill the Kingpinless void because Kingpin's over here doing something, and she's like, well, I can be the queen. But she says that, so it shows us her mentality there, and then 2 scenes later, her mentality is so distinctly different. She doesn't want family members and friends to know that she's back in town, but at the same time, you can tell that's bothering her. But at the same time, she has this, mission that is leaning more on the bad side than on the good side. So her character is kind of all over the place in this show, and I started to connect to her at a point, but every time I do, we go away from that and we focus on something else. So episode 2 is also scattered, but in a very different way. You do away with what was so interesting tonally about episode 1, the darkness and that TV mature rating. It just kind of goes away, and we don't really get any action sequences in episode 2. Frankly, I was getting a little bored. Then episode 3 happens, and there's this big thing that's going down at this skating rink. Yeah, it sounds... Yeah.
I mean, it's all right. Like,
there's some generic bad guys and some generic good guys, and there's this scuffle, this small town crime scuffle going on that I did not care about. And I'm like, wasn't this supposed to be an Echo show? Did someone send me the wrong screeners? Oh, there she is. Okay. And there's actually a really nice moment with her and someone that she has a relationship in there. And that's when I started to feel a connection. I'm like, that's a great scene. In the midst of all of this just mediocrity, this scene is working. Why don't we do more of this, or more of what we did in the beginning, or more of what we did in the trailer? Just not this small town villainous bad guy scuffle that I frankly couldn't have cared less about. And then she comes in, and there is a really cool fight sequence, but we know from the trailer that at one point, this is in the marketing, it's not a spoiler, she fights Daredevil. So she takes on Daredevil. It's pretty impressive. But then there are other moments where she's doing things, and I'm like, she took on Daredevil. Why is she struggling here? She should be doing... So I don't know. There's some inconsistency there. Austin, what'd you like about the show? I think what they're doing with Kingpin is interesting. Now, we lose sight of that at a point in the episodes that I was able to watch. So that was a bit of a bummer. And I do believe they're getting there with Maya's character. But 3 episodes in, I feel like I should feel more of a connection, or at least understand what side she's on exactly. It's like I'm not there with her mindset, and we've spent all this time with her, and there's only 2 episodes left. It just doesn't feel like there's enough time to really hone in on who she is as a character. And this story that they're building up with her heritage and what that's ultimately going to culminate to does interest me. And where we leave off at the end of episode 3, I'm like, okay, we're back. Let's go. But why did it take so long to get there? And why couldn't we have more of a consistent tone that starts off dark, and then there are really dark moments? We have the TV mature rating, but then there are other moments where it feels like it's trying to be a little too silly and inconsistent, and side characters, they don't feel like they belong in the show, and nothing's really memorable about those performances, and it's such a bummer because I wanted this to work. And I'm not saying it's going to fall on its face when we get the final 2 episodes, but right now I'm just so divided on what I've seen thus far, and I'm not really a fan of what this show has done. So before I give you my final thoughts, I'm not going to score it just yet. It's too early for that, and frankly not fair, but I want to see what the final 2 episodes have to offer. Are you enjoying Echo so far? How you feeling about what we got at this point? It's a bit of a mixed bag. I appreciate attempting to flesh out her heritage, and one action sequence is incredible, but the story, it's a bit unfocused. The editing is choppy, and the plot just isn't super interesting. I wanted this to be good, absolutely. A bit bummed so far, but let's see what happens next. If you guys enjoyed this review, sorry for the negativity. You want to drop a like, that'd be great. If not, come back. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff on this channel. The Beekeeper. It's going to be a good one. Yeah. Bees.